What's up, guys? This is Andrew here on Gearedinc, and today's game at a glance is Halo Wars 2, available through the Microsoft Store app or Xbox Live. As always, this review may contain light spoilers, but I will do my best not to give away too much of the story, so that being said, let's dive in. Now, I'm fairly new to reviewing things, and so let me say something about myself off the bat. I give a about story. In fact, it's one of the things I care most about. However, I can forgive a game that has absolutely terrible story if the mechanics are really good, just like I can forgive a game that has terrible mechanics if the story is excellent. Somehow Halo Wars 2 ends up being all things at the same time. Halo Wars 2 starts off 28 years after the events of Halo Wars 1, where we team up once again with the crew of the Spirit of Fire and Spartan Red team to kick some Covenant ass. Only it's not the Covenant, it's the Banished, a group of Covenant rebels led by a brute named Atriox. The game works really hard to drive this narrative that he's the baddest motherfucker in the galaxy, blah blah blah, that was able to somehow fight the Covenant at the height of their power. Well, if you've ever played any of the Halo games, then you, like me, are probably calling bullshit. Let me emphasize how ridiculous this point is. In the very first mission of the game, he kicks the out of Spartan Red team. For those of you who don't know, Spartans are basically super soldiers. And these aren't just any Spartans. These are Spartan 2s, the same kind of Spartan as the Master Chief. They were able to do this.
Let's go.
And yet somehow end up having this done to them by a single brute. So yeah, in terms of continuity, I guess it's just not a thing. Obviously, I could spend a lot of time on this, so I'm just going to move on to other parts of the story, which are a lot better. Now, at the start of the story, you get a new AI, as the previous one, Serena, has passed her operational lifespan of 7 years. Makes complete sense, that's in line with the lore of the game and everything else. But where you get this AI is something I had a problem with, because it's on the Ark, the thing that made the Halos, which I thought was destroyed at the end of Halo 3. Turns out, nope, had to double check the forums. Okay, check, moving on, it's not destroyed. I'm not going to continue to drive this point because honestly I want to get through the rest of this review. The story outside of all of that though is solid, and 343 Studios is able to show off their extremely beautiful cinematics, which we've seen from Halo Wars 1 all the way to Halo 5. Alright, now that we've got that off our chest, let's talk mechanics. This review is for the PC version of the game, and holy shit, is apparent it was made for consoles. The controls are not intuitive on a PC. It took me a full minute to realize you don't hit the escape from menu, how to look everything up. And what you think would do something if you've ever played a PC RTS doesn't really do it. On a console, it flows much better, and that's no more apparent than if you are playing the PC version. The base building aspects from Halo Wars 1 are back, but somehow they don't feel quite as good. Like, I know they made some improvements, but the game honestly felt like Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth, if any of you have ever played that, except without the choice of where you can build, and it wasn't nearly as awesome. Again, something like that on the console makes a lot more sense because you're trying to simplify the platform to make it easier to play on, with a controller. But if you've ever played RTSs, not having that choice is extremely frustrating. And I know Halo Wars 1 was the same, but I was hoping they would make the improvement in this game. They didn't. Now, hero units do make a return in this game, and Spartans are just as overpowered as they should be, but the enemy bosses honestly feel like they have way too much health and do way too much damage. I ended up having to build multiple armies just to kill a lot of them, which takes away from the feeling that you're actually controlling an army to take down a single enemy. I mean, you're telling me one brute can stand up to 50 infantry and 2 tanks and a bunch of different air, like, it just kind of takes you out of that element that this is like a war army versus army game. Now, you gain resources in the game by either controlling certain nodes spread out through the map, finding them just kind of lying on the ground, or making the buildings in your base that generate them passively. There is some choices as far as upgrade path, but not a whole lot. Now, as far as your units, it's infantry, ground vehicles, air, anti-air, very much rock, paper, scissors. Units have special abilities that can be triggered by R. You have commander abilities like airstrikes that can be triggered the same way. That's really where the strategy in the game comes into place, which is really unfortunate because I was honestly hoping for bigger armies, bigger decisions, and it usually just comes down to who has more units at the time you're fighting the enemy. Now, one of the things that was frustrating is this game is buggy as hell on the PC. There's been multiple times when I wasn't able to load anything up. Graphically, there were a lot of issues, driver issues. One of the things that's interesting is this game does support up to 4K natively, and it does look really good, but it also supports up to 8K, which I thought was kind of interesting because I don't know anyone playing at 8K yet. Now, where strategy actually comes into play isn't so much in the single player, but the multiplayer. So let's talk about that. Multiplayer is actually really fun. One-on-ones are good, team plays are good, and one of the things that's interesting is that the strategy actually comes a lot more into play. Yes, a lot of the maps, it's still won by just who has the bigger army at the time you're fighting, but that division where you are able to have one guy attacking one thing and someone else attacking something else, it adds that element to where you're actually having to strategize choices, which is obviously something that all RTS people want to have. So what's the verdict? Well, it's mixed. Story-wise, it's still solid. Cinematics look great, characters are still great outside of what we talked about, and even though it's 8 years from the first Halo Wars game, it still feels like Halo, which is good. That being said, this is very much a console game. On the PC, there are a lot of bugs. It still feels frustrating if you're a traditional RTS player, and so I give it 6.5 out of 10. Something to pick up when you're on sale. I wouldn't throw any money at it right now. If you enjoyed this review, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, leave me a thumbs down. Be sure to subscribe for more videos, and we'll see you next time.